Friday, not Friday. I was busy yesterday, so I was unable to do Mystery Unsolved. But here we are once again for the latest installment of Mystery Unsolved. In tonight's episode, we will be talking about a case that I once again got from the BuzzFeed Unsolved guys. And tonight we'll be looking into the disappearance of one Judge Joseph F. Crater. Uh, Probably not a highly known figure. I mean, he is a judge after all, but his disappearance is definitely on the side of the bizarre. That is one thing I do know. So bizarre that I myself was flabbergasted when I saw the episode of BuzzFeed Unsolved, hence the reason I'm doing it tonight myself. So, without further ado, Mystery Unsolved: The Disappearance of Judge Joseph F. Crater. Give you a little bit of a backstory, you know the deal. Joseph F. Crater was born on January 5th, 1889. He disappeared on August 6, 1930. He was not legally declared dead until June 6th of 1939. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9 years. That is 9 years. I didn't know. I don't know why I had to count that. Usually it's seven. I think that instinct told me it was seven, but he was a New York State Supreme Court justice who went missing amid a political scandal. He was last seen leaving a restaurant on West 45th Street in Manhattan and entered popular culture as one of the most mysterious missing person cases of the 20th century. You see what I mean? Like, crazy. Despite massive publicity, the case was never solved and was officially closed 40 years after he disappeared. So, you know how most times when you hear of a solved mystery, it's either solved right away or like after a few years they're like, okay, it's time to close this. This guy, it was just so freaking bizarre that they kept it open for nearly 40 years, and then they were finally like, all right, guys, time to close it. And you'll believe me, you'll see exactly what I mean of why this remains unsolved because it's a total head scratcher. He was age 41 when he disappeared and was presumed dead. All right, we don't really need to know about his life. He was a judge, so we know what that entails. All right. All right, here we go. In the summer of 1930, after the start of the first investigations of what would become the Seabury Commission, Crater and his wife, Stella Mance Wheeler, were vacationing at their summer cabin in Belgrade, Maine. Ooh, Maine in the summer. In late July, Crater received a telephone call. He offered no information to his wife about the content of the call, other than that to say he had to return to New York to straighten those fellows out. Oh, here we go. The next day, he arrived at his apartment at 45th Avenue, Greenwich Village, but instead of dealing with business, he was proceeded on. Yeah, sorry. But instead of dealing with the business, he proceeded onward to Atlantic City, New Jersey, with his mistress, showgirl Sally Lou Ritt, real name Sarah Ritzy. Oh, oh, okay, Judge, I see you. Crater returned to Maine on August 1st and traveled back to New York on August 3rd. Before making the final trip, he promised his wife that he would return by her birthday on August 9th. Crater's wife stated that he was in good spirits and behaving normally when he departed for the city. On the morning of Wednesday, August 6th, Crater spent 2 hours going through his files in his chambers, reportedly destroying several documents. He then had his law clerk, Joseph Mara, cash two checks for him that amounted to the U.S. Of $5,150, the equivalent to about $83,539 in 2021. At noon, he and Mara carried two locked briefcases to his apartment, and he let Mara take the rest of the day off. So, yeah, there's some shady business going on here. So, him and his law clerk are basically doing stuff, going over files in his office. He writes two checks out, and then they both go back to Crater's house. And Crater pretty much tells Mara, you know what? Good job today. You can take the rest of the day off. Later that evening, Crater went to a Broadway ticket agency, Supreme Ticket, and bought one seat from William Deutsch, the proprietor of Supreme, for a comedy called Dancing Partner at the Velasco Theater. He went to Billy Hass's shop house at 332 West 45th Street, where he ate dinner with Ritz and William Klein, a lawyer friend. So, so this guy's got like three different lives. Okay, number one, he's living with his, he's got lovely, the lovely life at home with the wife. Two, his business, he's a judge, and three, he likes to propriet the town, if you will, with his lady, his mistress, his lady friend. Crater's dinner companions gave differing accounts of his departure from the restaurant. Klein initially testified that the judge got into the taxicab outside the restaurant about 9:30 p.m. and drove west off 45th Street. This account was initially confirmed by Ritz. At the sidewalk, Judge Crater took a taxicab. Klein and Ritz later changed their story and said that they had entered a taxi outside the restaurant, but that Crater had walked down the street. That's weird. Like, why would it's like a simple little thing? Like, where was the judge? Like, oh, we saw him take a taxi home. Actually, you know what? We took the taxi and he walked home. Which is it? Delayed responses to disappearance. Crater's disappearance did not elicit any immediate reaction. When he did not return to Maine after 10 days, his wife began making calls to their friends in New York, asking whether anyone had seen him. Excuse me. Only when Crater failed to appear for the opening of the courts on August 25th did his fellow justices become alarmed. They started a private investigation but failed to find any trace of him. The police were finally notified on September 3rd, and after the missing judge was front page news. Once an official investigation was launched, the case received widespread publicity. Detectives discovered that the judge's safe deposit box had been emptied, and two briefcases that Crater and Mara had taken to his apartment were missing. These promising leads were quickly lost amid the thousands of false reports from people claiming to have seen the missing man. One thing I absolutely have noticed, and I absolutely love about unsolved mysteries or mystery cases, is they'll put like a bulletin out on, have you seen this man? Have you seen this woman? And almost all the time, these people come forward like, yeah, I saw him. I saw him down on Broadway. Or yeah, I saw him. He was over at Fifth Avenue. And they all give these weird accounts, but none of them probably saw the person that's missing. None of them. Crater enjoyed the city's nightlife and had been involved with several women. So, okay. Okay, Judge, now I really see you. So, aside from his life with the wife, his job, his mistress, the judge had a fourth. He had a fourth style, which was lavishing with the ladies. In the aftermath of the case, wow, I totally had a lisp there. In the aftermath of the case, two of the women he had been involved with left town and abruptly, and a third was, whoa, hold up, back up, sorry. Two of the women he had been involved with left town abruptly, and a third was murdered. Sarah Ritzie, who performed as Sally Lou Ritz, the showgirl who had dined with him, the evening he vanished, left New York in August or September of 1930. She was found in late September 1930 living in Youngstown, Ohio, with her parents. Ritzy said that she had left New York suddenly because she had received word that her father was ill. She was still being subjected to interviews by police investigating the Crater case in 1937, by which time she was living in Beverly Hills, California. That's a little suspicious, isn't it? She just abruptly leaves New York for Ohio because her father was ill. And then 7 years later, the police still want to talk to her, but when they go to Ohio, they find out, oh, wait, no, she's in Beverly Hills now. Why you keep moving, sweetheart? Huh? Why you keep moving? Showgirl June Bryce had been seen talking to Crater the day before he disappeared. Appears old Judge Crater had a type. Eh? A lawyer acting for Crater's wife believed that Bryce had been at the center of a scheme to blackmail Crater, thus explaining why Crater had taken out cash out of the bank, and that a gangster boyfriend of Bryce had killed the judge. Bryce disappeared the day the grand jury was to convene on the case. In 1948, she was discovered in a mental hospital. Wow, see what I mean? This plot just keeps getting thicker and thicker. Vivian Gordon, a third woman, was involved in high-end prostitution and linked to Madame Polly Adler. Gordon had liaisons with a large number of influential business people and was the owner, on paper at least, of a number of properties believed to be fronts for illegal activity. She was also seen around town with gangster Jack Legs Diamond, with whom Crater was rumored to socialize. So he's a judge, mind you, and the judge usually, proceeds on the law against criminals, and this man is seen with showgirls and gangsters. Crater had known Diamond's former boss, organized crime figure Arnold Rothstein, and had been extremely upset at Rothstein's murder. So I believe Arnold Rothstein is the man that Robert De Niro played in Casino. Is that right? I'm pretty sure that's his name. On February 20th, 1931, Gordon was angry about a conviction that had resulted in her losing custody of her 16-year-old daughter. She had met the head of an official inquiry into city government corruption launched in the wake of Crater's disappearance and offered to testify about police graft. She was murdered 5 days later. Oh yeah, this is definitely a conspiracy. Whatever Crater was involved in, he got the people around him murdered. I'm surprised his wife didn't get killed. Just because, not because of guilty by association, but she was married to the poor schmuck. The publicity surrounding Gordon's killing led to the resignation of a policeman whom she had accused of framing her, and the suicide of her daughter. Oh shit, look at that. Tammany Hall's hold on the city was largely eliminated in the ensuing scandal, as if it were already weakened by Rothstein and the conflicting over his former empire. This also led to the resignation of Mayor Jimmy Walker. So Crater goes missing, and look at what it causes. Look at the chain reaction it causes. 2 showgirls leave town, one gets murdered. One's found in a mental hospital. One's killed. The daughter of one of the showgirls kills herself. A mayor resigns. Arnold Rothstein's somehow involved. Like, the plot thickens. In October, a grand jury began examining the Crater case, calling 95 witnesses and amassing 975 pages of testimony. Mrs. Crater refused to appear. The conclusion was that the evidence is insufficient to warrant any expression of opinion as to whether Crater is alive or dead, or as to whether he has absented himself voluntarily. or is the sufferer from disease in the nature of amnesia, or is the victim of crime? In other words, they're like, we have no clue where the hell this man is, if he's still alive, and if he even knows who he is. On January 20th, 1931, 6 months after his disappearance, Crater's wife found envelopes containing checks, stocks, bonds, and a note from the judge in a dresser drawer, which had been empty when searched earlier by police. The discovery led to new but ultimately inconclusive leads, and no further trace of Crater was ever found. The case was officially closed in 1979. So, as you can see, it just kept building up. Crater, okay, hold on. So this one tells about, okay. So basically, Crater met his wife in 1917 when he served as her divorce lawyer, and they married 7 days after her divorce was finalized. Oh, that's interesting. Was she a showgirl too? Mrs. Crater remained at their vacation home in Maine during the search for her husband until her discovery of the hidden envelope. Without Crater's income, Mrs. Crater was unable to maintain the couple's Fifth Avenue apartment and was evicted. She petitioned to have the judge declared officially dead in July 1937. She was reportedly living on $12 per week, approximately $239.26 in 2022, that she earned as a telephone operator in Maine. Huh. Mrs. Crater married Carl Kuntz, a New York City electrician contractor in Elkton, Maryland, on April 23, 1938. Kuntz's first wife had hanged herself only 8 days before the wedding. Jesus Christ! Crater was finally declared legally dead in 1939 thanks to Mrs. Crater's lawyer, noted New York attorney MLK Ellis. She received $20,561 in life insurance. Mrs. Crater separated from Kuntz in 1950 and died in 1969 at age 70. Wow. Mrs. Crater expressed her belief that her husband had been murdered in her own account of the case. The Empty Road, which was written with freelance writer journalist Oscar Fraley and published by Doubleday in 1961. On August 19, 2005, authorities revealed that after Queens resident Stella Ferrucci Good's death at age 91, they had received notes she wrote in which she claimed that her husband, NYPD detective Robert Good, had learned that Crater was killed by Charles Burns, a NYPD officer who also worked as a bodyguard of Murder Inc. enforcer Abe Rillis and Burns' brother Frank. Again, the plot just thickens. This is the gangster group Murder Inc., not to be confused with the Irv Gotti rap syndicate, whatever you want to call it. According to the letter, Crater was buried near West 8th Street in Coney Island, Brooklyn, at the current site of the New York Aquarium. Oh God, why does this sound familiar? This sounds like Jimmy Hoffa being buried on the 50-yard line of Giant Stadium. Police reported that no records had been found to indicate that skeletal remains had been discovered at the site when it was excavated in the 1950s. Richard J. Toffel, the author of Vanishing Point, The Disappearance of Judge Crater, and the New York He Left Behind, expressed skepticism of the Ferrucci Good account. So there's a lot there. Basically, the man went missing. I know you're probably wondering, like, well, is there any do we know? And no, he left the restaurant, and that was the last anybody saw him. So he went missing. Excuse me. I sincerely apologize. There's a lot of claims that he was murdered. there's very little claims of him assuming a new identity or taking ill, dying somewhere in a ditch, because he was ill. Perhaps he got amnesia. I don't know. So let me just list out the theories a little more organized and more clearly. First theory, the man just disappeared. Maybe he knew he was under a lot of scrutiny. I mean, he had a wife, many, many lady friends, and it seems like he had a little bit of a money issue with some fellow crooks, if you know what I mean. So maybe he just kind of assumed a new life, if you will, perhaps. Maybe he assumed a new life. He moved somewhere out to a different state, took a different name, and is lived the luxury life, the luxurious life somewhere else. Two, he was straight up murdered, which seems to be the consensus here. I mean, there was a showgirl whose boyfriend, so he was cheating on his wife with this showgirl, and the showgirl was cheating on her boyfriend with Crater. That's not a disaster waiting to happen. But her boyfriend was connected to the mob, so that maybe he killed Crater upon finding out, like, oh, you're sleeping with my girl, huh, punk? I'm gonna pump you full of lead. um, so two, he was murdered. Three, perhaps he took ill. Again, maybe he just kind of disappeared and he took ill and then he just died. But that doesn't really make sense because surely somebody would have tracked him down, found his identity, and you know found out who he was. If you see me look away, it's not because I'm weird. It's because there's lights right above me, so the glare kind of hits me. So I'm just trying to, yeah, just like to clear that up. So three, maybe he just disappeared, but not on because he took L. I don't know. Four, maybe it was amnesia. Maybe some guys roughhoused him to the point where he didn't know who he was. Hence the reason he couldn't come back. Maybe people saw him, didn't really want to go up to him because they didn't really know him, but they knew of him. They said, hey, that looks like Judge Joseph F. Crater. Nah, it can't be. What do I think happened? I absolutely think he was murdered. I mean, given everything I just read, connections to the mob, he's sleeping with a ton of women, or he's seen schmoogling with a bunch of women that he shouldn't be, especially when he's married. And, money. The only thing missing here is drugs, right? He's got the money, he's got the women, and he's got the crime, the gangsters. So I think he was murdered. I think the mob murdered him, or that woman's boyfriend, the showgirl's boyfriend, murdered him. What do you think happened to Joseph F. Crater? Do you think he was murdered like me? Do you think, like me, you think he was murdered? I don't know why I said it weird like that. Do you agree with me? Do you think he was murdered? Amnesia? He just disappeared and rode off to his judgy sunset? I do hope you enjoyed this episode of Mystery Unsolved, the disappearance of Judge Joseph F. Crater. So it was definitely a case, again, 40 years it went unsolved. Finally, they closed it. They still, like, to this day, we don't know until that, 2015, excuse me, 2005 evidence of the police officers. I totally forgot about the police officer. He was connected to the mob too, so see, it's still mob related. So I definitely think he was murdered. Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So thank you all for. Well, nobody watched because nobody ever watches, but for those that watch in the playback, it'll be much appreciated. And do stay tuned next week for Mystery Unsolved. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it Friday like I usually do. If not, I'll just jump on the following day and do it then. Do stay tuned for the conclusion episodes. Give me one moment. All right, I'm going to give you a little rundown before I decide to head off here of the upcoming episodes of Mystery Unsolved. We have 3 episodes left of this season, and then I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and then I will do the. You know what? I just remembered. Obviously, Christmas is going to be coming, so I'm probably going to try to jam pack 3 episodes into maybe 2 weeks. We'll see. But the final 3 episodes of Mystery Unsolved. I don't expect you to remember this, but if you watch this in the playback and you're like, "Ooh, I want to make sure I check that one out," that's why I'm doing it. It's my own sanity. Mystery Unsolved. Jesse James. What's how's there a mystery on him? You'll find out. John Wilkes Booth and Frank Finkel, who is a very interesting case. But yeah, do stay tuned for those. I will let you all know, of course, when I hear them, when I go live. This has been Mystery Unsolved. I am, of course, your host, Joseph B. Until next time.